Hello and welcome to Episode 3, Spartan Space, Moon Mission, and Space Exploration. To understand this landscape of space exploration, we have today with us the subject matter expert, Dr. Peter Weiss. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Omka. Nice to be with you.
Likewise, thank you very much for joining us. As we'll be taking a deep dive into this topic, so can you please provide us a brief outlook on your journey as a space technology expert?
Yes, sure. To be honest, I didn't really start as in the space sector. I was working a long time in the maritime sector, and actually the company, the enterprise or the startup that we created goes in this direction. It's actually what we are working on are habitation system and technologies related to that. But not only for space, also for other extreme environment like the underwater environment, because we believe there are lots of synergies between both fields. Like, for example, a life support system that can be used underwater can be transferred to space in a space station, or the other way around. And that's actually what we want to achieve with our company.
Amazing. I think you mentioned maritime, and I believe maritime and space have a very close connection because space law has been based on the maritime aspects and even the underwater training of the astronauts as well. So it's really great to see, this cross-industrial function that you have brought up to in your career as well as to your team. So can you tell us more about the Spartan space and how do you see the company shaping the Europe's space exploration landscape?
Yeah, sure. So our company is quite young. We have been founded a little bit more than 1 year ago. And what is important for me, I'm not alone. I've several associates, so several people that joined me from the last company. But also we have two astronauts with us, two French astronauts, Jean-François Clairvoy and Jean-Jacques Favier, and also architects from the maritime and space sector, like Jacques Rougerie. And this is important for me. Actually, what I want to have is a company that is working in these different and exciting fields with different experts from these fields. It's quite an international company, I must say. So we are not French alone. We have Indian colleagues, we have German colleagues like I am, and also quite intergenerational, if I might say, because we have quite young colleagues, if I might say, and people who are maybe a little bit less young. And that's important for me because there are lots of knowledge that can be transferred from one generation to the next one. And actually, what we want to achieve is we have a vision about how the coming decades will look like. We strongly believe that humans will return to the moon, so we will go beyond low Earth orbit. And it's a clear strategy that can be seen with NASA and other space agencies right now. Europe is a little bit reluctant and still searching its way there, or its contribution, and we have a good proposal for that. But not only underwater, it's also not only space but also underwater, because our planet is changing, population is growing. Basically, the technology that we are developing for space shall come back to Earth, and not only to extreme environment, but also in normal households, because basically the requirements that you have for space habitat, like being energy efficient, recycling goods and things like that, we need to put them into application also in normal households.
All right. That's pretty much wide, I would say, in a wide range of applications. So, like, considering your company's expertise, I would say, in extreme environment infrastructure, can you please provide us a brief outlook on your team's achievements, especially in the other industrial sectors as well, apart from space?
Actually, our main focus right now is on one particular space project, which is called EuroHub. So that's a secondary habitat or a secondary habitat concept that could be a contribution to Artemis. But apart from that development, which again, as I said, is taking quite a lot of our time right now, we have several developments in underwater training for astronauts, but also for other applications, and several smaller underwater habitat developments that we are trying to push further.
Wow, that's amazing. And looking at, the EuroHab that you mentioned at the moment, like I have been hearing about the Artemis program a lot, and how the astronauts will potentially, operate over there in such an extreme environment. So can you give us a brief about what is EuroHab and who are the partners, and how is your work going on in general with the EuroHab?
Yeah, so EuroHab is a concept of a secondary habitat. Secondary habitat means that thing can be used like a base camp. If you, for example, you want to go to Mount Everest, you have a base camp at a certain altitude, and before you go to the summit, you stay some time there. And that's a little bit the same idea with EuroHub. We were analyzing the concepts of operation of the Artemis missions by NASA. And actually, so all these missions, Artemis, but also others like the Chinese, are targeting the South Pole of the Moon. Why the South Pole? Simply because there are the resources, so there are some interesting resources that can be used for human spaceflight. Now, when you look at that zone, that cartography, you see that actually there's quite a huge gap between sites that can be considered safe for human landing, which basically are sites that are flat and you don't have big boulders and mountains and things like that. And on the other hand, the sites that are interesting for resources or for science. So there's a gap between both over several tens of kilometers. And the problem is in human spaceflight, on surface extravehicular activity, EVA, you cannot go beyond a certain distance from your landing spot, because so technically you could go further, but it's a question of security. You want the astronauts to be able to go back if there's a problem with the suit or something like that. And here comes the secondary habitats. If you imagine you put in between the landing spot and the spot where the astronauts ultimately want to go a secondary habitat, then you could go to these spots, because in the case of a problem, the astronauts could go back to the secondary habitat. And this is the concept of EuroHub. It's a habitat, it's a rather small habitat, but which is conceived like a payload. And it can be brought to the lunar surface by a vehicle which is under development by the European Space Agency. This vehicle is called European Large Logistic Lander, EL3. And so our habitat is sitting on the top of that system and can be landing with that system on the moon alone, robotically. It folds up, inflates, and then it's waiting for the astronauts to come. And that's the concept of EuroHub. And as the name indicates, we hope that this could become a European contribution to this kind of to programs like Artemis.
That's really good that we are actually hearing this kind of developments in Europe, because I believe for a long time it's only been satellite, and it's really good to see the emergence of space exploration finally, and that too in a very commercial and private segment. So with the changing dynamics, yes, sorry, I have a cut in between. Would you like?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Omka. It's exactly like that, because it's human spaceflight is extremely important. It's not only about science. It's not only maybe about a return of investment financially wise. Actually, to be honest with you, the biggest return of investment is inspiration for young people to study science, young people to maybe stay here in Europe to continue working here, and not maybe going to the US because opportunities are bigger. So that is extremely important. And as you said, Europe has a fantastic potential, but what concerns the missions to the moon, to the lunar surface, I think we should have a stronger position.
Yes, definitely. I think not only from a, like the business perspective or the science and research, but it is also about creating the future leaders, as you mentioned about the inspiration. I've
Mm.
seen the Euro being exhibited not only in Europe but in the other parts of the world, and I think it is serving as an inspiration to the young people who are at the moment pursuing their academic studies in various fields. So definitely,
Exactly.
I think it will be changing the landscape of the space exploration. Just looping up this point with the changing dynamics of the space industry, do you believe there is an increase in investment in the space exploration domain?
Oh yes, yes, absolutely. I mean that is a trend that started clearly in the United States, and I mean everybody knows the most prominent examples of very successful companies, young companies that are doing fantastic things today. Um, from a European perspective, I must say there's a highly increased interest in space too, and in the private space sector, in startups, new space, where we are clearly sitting in, and that is also something that we want to push forward. We cannot expect doing new space with, if I might say, old methods. The whole thinking needs to change, and it's changing now. I see it. To give you an example, what we are trying to achieve is proposing a service. A little bit, if I might say, like SpaceX or Ariane. I mean, they are not selling rockets; they are selling a service. They are selling a transport service from the ground to ISS of cargo or astronauts. So the keyword is service, and we want to do the same thing. And actually, what we are working on is a concept. We propose a habitat as a service. Might it be an underwater habitat, or might it be a habitat on the moon? A little bit like an Airbnb on the moon.
All right. That's that is like, completely out of the world, Airbnb. But
Yeah.
I think we are reaching that point where we see a lot of private investors, not only the investors, but from a consumer point of view as well. People are urging. There have been like quite a few filmmakers as well who are trying to reach to the space and
Mm.
film the actual raw footage rather than using the VFX. So I think we are reaching that point where it can be, outsourced as a Airbnb service, definitely. And how do you think the upcoming moon missions will push the boundaries for the private space companies, especially from the business point of view that we were just speaking about, how it will turn out as an Airbnb service, and from a research point of view as well?
I mean, I start with the research point of view. Um, Moon is the obligatory stepping stone before going further. When people talk about or say, why shall we go back to the moon? We have already been there. We should go to Mars. I'm sorry, today this is not the way to go. There is an obligation. We have to go back to the moon because the moon is our closest neighbor, and on the moon we will learn how to go much further. Today, if the world or big nations would invest in a mission to Mars, for example, I think what would be happening, we would pump a lot of money into that, and that will simply end with just another flag somewhere on the surface of Mars, and then we don't return for 60 years. I don't want to see that. What I want to see is developing a sustainable presence of robotic systems and humans on the lunar surface, and from there on we go further, and that is really important. And that will, of course, have an enormous impact on science and technology. Now, concerning the private sector, the commercial sector coming into that game, I strongly believe in that, really, because I mean, just take a comparison. If you would have told your grandparents, for example, that the fuel that you are using with your car every day is going to be recovered in 3,000 meter water depth, they might have said, no, this will never be happening. But that is what's happening today. If there's enough investment, you get enough technology in order to recover resources from the most extreme environments, like oil and gas in the deep sea. So why shouldn't that work on the moon? It's just a question of the resources being there, and they are there. The right people encourage us enough to invest, and then the door is open. And I strongly believe in that. The world is so much changing. The world was so much changing these last years. I think we are in front of an era that will a little bit revolutionize our whole the whole way we are living and how our planet is working.
Amazing. I think the point that you mentioned about the flag, especially, I really believe we shouldn't be doing the same with the Mars, just putting up a flag and then we have nothing. I believe even though back in those decades, we reached the moon, but the issue was like we didn't had a full-fledged capacity
Yep.
to manage things very well. And I think those days even saw a lot of kind of failures in the missions where there was a human loss as well. So I believe it's really better to go, in a step-by-step way. Like moon can be a experimental base for everything that we develop capacity for.
I totally agree, and to be honest with you, I believe we are back in a space race, if I might say, like at the time between the Soviet Union and the United States. We are back in a race towards the moon, but this race will not stop with a flag or boots on the moon. That race will go much further. The next milestone is building up some infrastructure on the lunar surface, and then getting more and more complex maybe in this infrastructure. So it's somehow the same challenges or similar challenges, but it's clearly not the same goal. If the United States, for example, would just return to plant, if I might say, another flag, that wouldn't stop other nations to push further and go towards like the Chinese and International Lunar Base Station or something like that. And that is what is going to happen. Nobody can stop that. And either we are part of that game, and here I speak from an European perspective, so either Europe is part of it or Europe is not part of it. But the zone that we are talking about on the lunar surface is quite limited in terms of size. So the actors that will be present there will be those who will be dominating the next steps, going to Mars, etc. And again, speaking from a European perspective, it would be extremely sad if there's no contribution on that challenge.
That's really nice. We actually touched upon the international cooperation part as well over here. But I think we have very limited time, so we have possibly, in the next few sessions, definitely it will be interesting to cover, from the international cooperation point of view. Coming to this point itself, we see US has initiated the Artemis program, human spaceflight program. So do you think this program will serve as a benchmark to boost private investment in space exploration? Because a lot of countries are also participating in the Artemis, like New Zealand, who are actually right now, I would say, an emerging nation in space, even though they have some companies like Dawn Aerospace and Rocket Lab. So can you just provide us a brief on this, like how this will boost investments in space exploration?
I just can totally confirm your statement. I mean, Artemis program, and I'm a big fan of Artemis program. That it's fantastic that the United States and, if I might say, parts of the world are going towards that journey. But again, it's as you just said, it's not Apollo. It's not in the sense, as I said, that it's not about planting a flag. It's about going further. And it's also about international cooperation with countries that have, if I might say, the same mind spirit, going in this direction and build something together, and that is very important.
Yes.
And very important, the third aspect is it's not only agencies, it's also private entities. I mean, you look at the program today as it looks. There's a huge contribution from partners like SpaceX and other, and this is fantastic. This is exactly the way it should go. It's not against the agencies. It's bringing new blood, new thinking, new methods in this whole process by pushing the common goal further. So it's good.
Definitely, I think let's hope that this kind of initiatives will push the boundaries. I believe just the way, as I mentioned, Spartan Space has been inspiring the students and the research scholars as well through the exhibition and through several events.
I hope so.
Yeah. So as a science and technology expert, I would say I wouldn't say, because you really have a cross-functional area of expertise and multidisciplinary approach, Peter. So definitely I would call you as a science technology expert, because as we know, like even in the space that it's not a independent branch. It's something that is very much interdisciplinary. Whether if you take up communication, you need to know about telecommunication. So I would refer to as a science technology expert. So from that perspective, what message would you like to give to future generation stepping into the field of space science and technology?
Never start dreaming. Push open doors. Yeah, don't be hesitating, asking, approaching big names. I mean, everybody can contribute to that, and we get so many fantastic ideas from young people. Yeah, future is yours, so open it, use it.
Yes. I think, yeah, we have to be open to every kind of possibility. Generally, people have this kind of illusion that it's only an engineer who can make a difference in the industry, but it's a wide variety and a range of people from different backgrounds who can make a difference in the space industry.
I totally agree. You do not need only to be an engineer, if I might say, in order to contribute here. The people I'm working on coming from different fields. As I said, we have, of course, astronauts and architects and designers. But in our daily work, we work with divers, we work with technicians, and a lot of very, very good and concrete solutions to our problems are not coming out of some kind of CAD system or something like that. It's coming by a discussion with the guys who build it. So yeah, everybody can contribute, everybody on every level.
Yes. So thank you, Peter, very much for providing us, the brief insights. There are several questions, I guess, that popped up, and especially the international cooperation part that we touched upon. Definitely, I'd be very much glad to have a second session whenever possible after the the summer crunch up has gone. So we can definitely have a second session as well. So thank you very much for providing us this valuable insights.
Thank you, Omkar. Would be with great pleasure to talk to you again.